Welcome to 3DOptix tutorials. Today we are going to review the optics catalog available in 3DOptix. First, we need to create a file. I've pre-populated this file so we can just move into the project. Let's go ahead and click. Now, when we want to query the optics catalog, we need to be here in the 3D layout, and we can right-click anywhere in the 3D layout. This will bring up the dialog box here, and we can select Open Optics menu to find that catalog. Okay, so here is the optics catalog. Starting from the top here, we can see we have a couple column headers. And as we can see, there are several of them, the last one being height. So this will help us sort by which optics we're looking for. Now, down on the bottom right here, the Add Columns button, if we click on this, this will bring us to the possible columns we can select and the current columns we have. So as you can see here, the checkbox denote the current headers that we have. And we can scroll down to see some of the other options that we have. Dimensions, length of hypotenuse for optics that have such things, thickness of center, and so on. So there's a couple different columns we can use to search for our optics. So we're going to leave all the column headers here as is. Let's click out of here. Okay. Now on the left, we have the filters for all of our optics. If we're searching for a general optic with some parameters that we need, we can use this over here. Or if we know exactly what optic we're searching for, we can use the search bar. Let's start with the filter bar on the left here. Now the first option is inches or millimeters, so imperial or metric. We'll stick with millimeters. And at the end, when we get done with all of our filtering, if we want to reset the filters to get this all back into a view of all the optics, we can hit the reset filter button. Okay, now the first option is ownership. So we have three options here. We can search for all optics in the public and private folders, or public or private folders. Now the public folder is all of the optics available through 3DOptix catalog, and the private folder is going to be the optics that we have imported into our own catalog. So let's keep that at public for now. So for types, very self-explanatory. If you're looking for a specific type of optic, you can search for that here. So we can look for a prism or a lens, or we can just filter by all if we're looking for optics with a certain substrate. Keep that as all. And we can also filter by brands. If there's a certain manufacturer that we want to use exclusively because we have all of our optics available through them, we can search only in their catalog, or we can search everybody's catalog. So we'll select that off. Next is material, which will bring a drop down of all the current materials in the catalog. There isn't an option to filter materials further, so this is better to use if you know exactly what material you want to use and the manufacturer's catalog name for it. Okay, we will not select the material for this. The next option is shape, and this will let you filter by none, rectangular, circular, or volume. The first three, none, rectangular, or circular, will search all of the optics in the catalog. The fourth option here, volume, will let you search for volume optics such as beam splitters and prisms. Okay, we'll set this back to none. And finally, we can search by diameter. We can enter a custom range here using the scroll bar, or we can enter a range in, or we can choose a range that's pre-populated down here. Okay. So that's a way to filter optics for the catalog. Now let's go up here and search for a specific catalog item. So we're going to search for an Edmund Optics lens. The catalog name is 47-633. And if we click enter, the list will populate with possible lenses. Okay, as we can see, the first two are the Edmund Optics lenses. The first one is the standard lens. The second one is the standard lens with the ink edging to reduce scattering. The third is a Thorlabs lens, and the fourth is an Opto-Sigma notch filter. Now, the third and fourth options in the list have come about because 47 is also in their name. So we have the 47 for the Thorlabs, and we have the 47 for the Opto-Sigma notch filter. Okay, let's select this lens and bring it into our optical system. Now notice that when the lens pops up, it's going to be placed wherever our cursor was when we right-clicked and opened the optics menu. So my cursor was here, so it'll place it here. Now we're going to center this for our coordinate system. So we're going to go x equals 0, z equals 0, and we're going to have it 100 millimeters above the breadboard. Now this is the center of the breadboard, and this is our global coordinate system. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our catalog optics that we placed. We're going to right click and go to Optical Settings here. And this will bring up the prescription of our optic. So we can see the name has the name and also a couple pertinent parameters for it. We can see the brand, shape, type, and subtype. And we also have this nice little web link to the product. So if we click on this, another pop-up will come up. This brings us to the landing page of our optic. This is nice if we have a bunch of optics we want to add to a cart and purchase, or to see some more specific parameters from the manufacturer. All right, let's close out of this. And down here in optics geometrical properties, we have the properties of the optic. We have the diameter, the radii, and the thickness of the center and the thickness of the lens. And now if we want to change any of these, we can. If we need a template for a custom optic that we want, we can change these diameters, the radius, and the thickness to make sure that it actually is a real manufacturable lens. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with a custom lens that's not manufacturable. Okay, so we'll leave that. Okay, the next two tabs describe the material substrate of each element. Since this is a multi-element achromat, we have two different materials. So let's go ahead and click Material 1 Info, and this will bring up all of the material information. The manufacturer's using the Sellmeier equation for dispersion. Now over here, we can change the lambda, or the wavelength, to see what happens at different spectral regions. Now this doesn't change anything about the optic, but it'll display the new index of refraction for different ranges. Let's go back to 500. Okay, now we can change the material substrate if we so choose. That is an option, but the rest of it will be generated by the substrate. Okay, if we click on Material 2 Info, we see everything's very similar, but it's just a different material. Okay. So let's go to optical surfaces. As you can see, we have 4 surfaces because we have 2 substrates glued together. So we're going to go to the first front surface. Okay, so this is the information for the front surface of our achromat. So the name is front. We can change this if we want to. We're going to leave it as front for now. We can go into simulation settings. Now right now we're set for no reflections, but if we do want some reflections, we can deselect this box and we can change the max amount of bounces. Now the max amount of bounces will be important because we don't want too many rays bouncing out of our system and slowing down our simulation. So this is something we can toggle up and down, and this is what we want to see from our reflections. So kind of depending on how you set up your system, you may want to increase or decrease this. For now, we'll just stay with no reflections. Now down here in scattering information, we can enable scattering, and this will enable us to change the scattering model and proportions in our system. Okay, and down here we can see our transmission, reflectance, and absorbance percentages. Now if we change these, they will make sure that the total T plus R plus A equals 100%. So if we reduce this, it'll add 10 to the absorption because we only have 90% transmission reflection. And you can change these into whatever percentage you desire. And if we have 0 for transmission and reflection, the absorption will be 100%. Okay, and we can also change the number of scattered rays and the relative power threshold. So all the rays under this relative power threshold will be lost to the system. So the system will just ignore those. Now, for scattering model, we can choose Gaussian, so a Gaussian scattering model, a Lambertian or even scattering model, a certain cosine model, or an ABG model. So all of these different models will propagate the scattering in different directions at different intensities. Now for each one of these models, there's a few parameters. This is something we'll go over in a future video to go into more depth about the scattering models and how they work. Okay, so we're going to deselect enable scattering. We're going to keep that going. Okay, and then we're going to go back to our optical element. Now, if you select the back or the front of the other optics, you're going to see the same information. So let's jump into the back of the second part of this acromat. As you can see, it has the same options here. Okay, what we are going to do is we will right click. Now we're going to go back to the optics menu and we're going to search for a filter. We're just going to select the first filter that comes up. Again, we're going to click and right click on the optic, our new filter, and we're going to look at the front face. So as you can see, there's an additional option for some optics. For this filter, for filters in general, we also have a coding chart. So if you click on this, it will show you the coding that is being applied to this optic. Down here, we can look at the wavelength range and display it. We can also look at transmission and reflection, and also S&P polarization. So if we go to reflection, this will just be the inverse of the transmission graph minus the absorption. Okay. All right, I hope this gives you a better understanding of the optics catalog in 3D Optics.